They told you this story your whole life, that God made man from clay, and then, seeing that he was alone, took one of his ribs and molded a woman from it, a small curved bone, something discreet, almost invisible. And with that, a symbol was created, a truth was established, and for centuries it was repeated, taught, and tattooed into the subconscious of generations. But what if it isn't so? What if it was never a rib? What if what was taken was not a bone, but an entire side of the being? Imagine Adam in a deep sleep, not just simple rest, but a sacred trance. Something was about to happen, something that neither heaven nor earth understood immediately. And then God removes something from within him, not just any part, but his side, his hidden face, that which was mystery, depth, and silence within him. And with that gives form to what we call Eve. But Eve does not emerge as a smaller piece. She appears as a mirror, the reflection of what was hidden, the revelation of the invisible. And what if this story was never about gender or hierarchy? What if it has always been a spiritual code, a map of being, a reminder that there is something inside you that was taken not to diminish you, but so that you could recognize it outside yourself, and then remember who you are? Today, let's pass through that veil, not to deny what was taught, but to dive deeper, to listen to what the original text whispers and that perhaps no one told you. Because the woman did not come from a rib. She came from the side where the spirit rests, from the place where the invisible manifests, from the forgotten part that sustains the whole. And maybe this story is not just about Adam. Maybe it is about you, about the side you lost, and that now is ready to be remembered. A story can change the world, but a word can change the meaning of an entire story. In the oldest Hebrew text of the Bible, the one many have never read, there is no word for rib. Not there. Not in that passage. The word used is tsela, itzela. For the people who wrote the first verses of creation, it did not mean a bone. It meant a side, a hidden face, a supporting structure, like the sides of a sacred temple, like the side of the tabernacle where the divine presence touched the earth. Why does this matter? Because when we read that God removed a rib from Adam, we imagine a detail, a small part, something that can be removed without affecting wholeness. But when we return to the original text, we realize that what was taken was not just a fragment. It was a half, an entire side of the being. This word appears dozens of times throughout the scriptures, almost always describing sides of sacred constructions, the side of a mountain, the flank of an altar, the support of something divine. It is never a discrete little bone. It is what holds the whole in balance. And in Genesis, it is from this word that Eve is formed. Can you feel what this means? Eve is not made from a leftover. She is made from a revealed face, from a hidden side that could only manifest through love and symbolic separation. This changes everything, because we are not talking about anatomy. We are talking about spiritual architecture, an invisible structure where the human being was whole, and for love, for purpose, for mystery, was divided. And thus, Eve becomes more than a woman. She becomes a symbol. She is the sacred side that was hidden, the womb of the invisible, the manifestation of the side that sustains the divine presence within the being. And maybe, just maybe, this is why so many traditions see woman not as inferior, but as the keeper of the secret. Maybe tsela was mistranslated, or maybe it was translated that way because the world was not yet ready. But now, maybe it is. Maybe you are, because the return to truth does not begin with great revolutions. It begins with the silent act of remembering. Before the fall, before the pain, before the division, there was one being, one complete, whole, silently divine being. They called this being Adam, but he was not yet the man as we know him. He was a state of consciousness, a living manifestation of the union between spirit and matter, the reflection of the whole still undivided. The Hebrew tradition says that this being was molded from the dust of the earth, but animated by the breath of God, a meeting point between high and low, an embodied axis of the universe. And it was not only the Hebrew tradition that intuited this. Plato also told us this story, but in a different way. In the Symposium, he speaks of primordial beings, perfect spheres with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 faces looking in opposite directions. These beings contained both masculine and feminine within themselves. They were self-sufficient, so powerful that the gods divided them in half. Since then, each half has wandered the world seeking to reunite with its other side, not for physical desire, but for a spiritual memory, a familiar remembrance. Genesis and Plato speak of the same thing, the breaking of a primordial unity, of a whole being that needed to break apart to recognize itself. The division between Adam and Eve was not a mistake. It was a calling. Because when the being is one, it does not yet see itself. It is necessary for there to be the other, so that the self can emerge. It is in the reflection that recognition is born. It is in the separation that consciousness arises. Eve was not created afterward. She was revealed. She was always there as the inner side, the hidden principle, the silence within the voice. And when Adam sees her, he is not seeing a new creature. He is seeing what he was before he forgot. And perhaps that is why this story resonates so deeply within us. Because each of us, too, was once whole at some deep level. Each of us carries the echo of that separation, and each search for love, for meaning, for completeness, is an attempt to return home. Have you ever felt it? That sensation of searching for something without knowing exactly what, of wanting to merge with someone, with something, with the world, not out of need, but out of remembrance. Maybe it is not desire. Maybe it is an archetypal calling, the memory that you too were once whole, and that now you are here, living the journey of return. Eve. How many times has that name been used to speak of submission, error, weakness? How many times has she been seen as the after, the less, the last? But what if Eve is in truth the oldest, symbol of what humanity has forgotten? What if she is the mirror of the hidden side of the being, not the mistake, but the messenger of revelation? Because what was taken from Adam was not a disposable piece. It was his veiled side, the part that had not yet been spoken, the silence between the words, the support of the whole from within. Eve is that mystery. In the oldest spiritual traditions, she's reflected in the figure of Sophia, the divine wisdom that descends into the lower worlds to carry the spark back to the light. In Hinduism, she vibrates as Shakti, the cosmic power that animates the universe and gives form to the divine masculine energy. In Tibetan Buddhism, she is like Tara, the compassionate mother, the feminine guide who leads lost souls across the ocean of existence. In ancient Egypt, she is revealed as Isis, the one who gathers the pieces of the one so that he may be reborn. And according to Helena Blavatsky, one of the deepest voices of modern theosophy, this feminine wisdom, called by the ancients the Divine Mother or Mula Prakriti, is the very matrix of the universe. It is not passive, it is intelligent, it is spiritual, it is consciousness in the form of life, and it lives within each being as the hidden memory of totality. Thus, Eve is not created, she is evoked. She is the symbolic embodiment of what was latent. She is the manifestation of the invisible, the collective soul that finally has a face. And because of that, she provokes fear, because everything that reveals also confronts. The side that for so long was suppressed, the intuitive, the sensitive, the receptive, the deep, resurges with strength and reminds us that there is a wisdom that is not logical, but just as real as the sun. Eve is the portal to that wisdom, the one who carries the spark of return. Not just for Adam, but for all who have forgotten who they are. And maybe that's why, when we look at her, we feel something we can't quite explain. A longing, a reverence, or an inexplicable fear. Because looking at Eve is looking at what we have let fall asleep inside of us. Perhaps you feel it now, a gentle call, an ancient memory, because Eve is alive. Not outside of you, but within you, as the part of the being that knows, as the presence that feels, as the voice that does not shout, but never falls silent. The question that almost no one asks is, why separate if the being was whole, complete, in harmony with the all? Why divide? The answer may not lie in logic, but in the symbol, because the symbol is the language of the soul. Adam and Eve are the first separation, the first experience of duality, the moment when the being ceases to be one only in essence and becomes two, so that it can recognize itself through the other. It is not punishment. It is a mirror, an initiation. The separation between Adam and Eve is a reflection of what we all live, the feeling of being. Incomplete, of seeking outside what seems lost inside, of desiring union with the other and sometimes not even knowing why. But what if this desire for fusion, so often confused with neediness or fear of loneliness, is actually a spiritual memory? What if what we call loneliness is merely the echo of a time when we were whole and now, divided, we walk through this existence with a longing for the unity that was once ours? This is what the oldest traditions speak of. In Gnosis, the soul falls into the world of matter, forgetting its luminous origin. In Tibetan Buddhism, the pure mind becomes clouded and enters the cycle of samsara, the cycle of existences, seeking without knowing to return to its essential nature. In Theosophy, Blavatsky explains that separation is one of the processes of spirit's own manifestation. In the physical plane, the one fragments so that upon reuniting, it reaches an even higher degree of consciousness. To separate is to remember by contrast. It is to see oneself through distance. It is to love in order to approach what has always been present but invisible. Eve, upon being revealed, is the reminder. She carries within her the thread of memory. And Adam, upon seeing her, recognizes not only her but himself through her. It is the same with us. The other reveals us. Relationships mirror us. Absences teach us. And each encounter, each pain, each love is part of the path back to that which never left us. Separation is not the end, it is the beginning of remembrance, and what we call the fall may have been only the first step toward ascension. Before continuing, it is worth a brief reminder. As in other videos on the channel, we are not seeking to affirm or deny the story of Adam and Eve as literal fact or absolute myth. This narrative has already been explored through many lenses by us, from symbolic to spiritual, from Gnostic to esoteric, and if you haven't seen those videos yet, it is very worthwhile to dive into them. But at this moment, in this video, we have chosen to take the Genesis text in its apparent literalness, not to validate dogmas or beliefs, but to listen to what it has to tell us, because sometimes by observing the form carefully, we can see the essence, and that is what we are talking about here. Now, returning to the scene, and the two shall become one flesh. How many times have you heard this phrase, maybe at an altar, maybe in a sacred book, or in a sermon about marriage? But what does one flesh mean? Is it merely coexistence, contract, companionship, or is it a code? When Adam sees Eve for the first time, he does not say, "This is a stranger." He says, "This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." He recognizes in her something that is not new, but something that was always his, something that was hidden and now has a face. This recognition is alchemical. The ancient alchemists, when describing their great work, were not only speaking about metals, they spoke about souls, about internal processes, about fire, earth, water, and air, as symbols of states of spirit. They called the union of the sun and the moon, the king and the queen, sulfur and mercury, not the love of two separate beings, but the meeting of two polarities within the same being. Adam and Eve are not just man and woman, they are the reflection of what exists within you, the part that acts and the part that feels, the part that thinks and the part that dreams, the part that protects and the part that nurtures. And when these parts meet, when they look each other in the eyes with truth, the miracle happens. Matter elevates, spirit anchors, and the being becomes its own masterpiece. In alchemy, this moment is called conjunctio, the sacred union that initiates true transmutation. There is no gold without this fusion. There is no illumination without this marriage. This is what Genesis speaks of. This is what the Kybalion speaks of when it says, as above, so below, as within, so without. When Adam and Eve become one flesh, it is not just desire, it is reintegration, it is remembrance, it is the return to original unity, now with consciousness. And this does not happen only through human love. It happens when you, alone in your silence, recognize all your parts and decide to welcome what has been rejected. This is the true marriage, the union between who you are and who you have always been, between the side you show and the side you hide. And when this union happens, something changes. Life ceases to be fragmentary and becomes a work, the work of the being, your work. A word can seem small, but when misunderstood, it can distort entire centuries of meaning. That is what happened with Tsela, the original Hebrew term used in Genesis to describe what God removed from Adam. It did not mean rib. It meant side, a face, an entire part, something profound, structural, sacred. But when translated into Greek, in the version known as the Septuagint, the term became ambiguous. They used the word pleura, which can mean either side or rib. Later, in the Latin translation by Jerome, the Vulgate, this ambiguity solidified. Tsela became costa, a literal rib, ossified. It was not just a choice of word, it was the creation of a new reading. And this reading influenced not only theology, but culture, spirituality, the way the feminine came to be seen. The woman ceased to be the mirror of the hidden side and came to be understood as a small part removed from man, secondary, derivative. And perhaps this not only distanced us from the truth about Eve, but from the truth about ourselves, because the symbol broke, and with it, the memory of wholeness broke. But now, the cycle turns again. Truth resurfaces. The word reconnects with its essence. And the most beautiful thing is that nothing was in vain. Neither the error, nor the forgetfulness, nor the centuries of silence. Because even the detour was part of the work, even the shadow served the light. Now the revelation is no longer a shock, it is a return, a soft touch, in the center of the chest. We are not here to condemn translations. We are here to remember what the heart has always known. Eve did not come from a bone. She came from the side that sustains, from the side that feels, from the side that was missing. And perhaps this story has not changed. Perhaps the one who is changing now is you. After all we have traveled together, perhaps the only remaining question is no longer where Eve came from, but where Eve is now. Because if this story was always about sides, hidden faces, fragments that were once whole, then it is also speaking about you, yes, you, because there is also within you a side that was veiled, an aspect rejected, forgotten, disbelieved, but essential. Perhaps you have felt it in moments of silence, in that longing to merge with something greater than yourself. You weren't sure if it was love, spirituality, or saudade. Perhaps it was all of it. Or perhaps it was just memory, the memory of a time when you were one, whole, and did not need to seek in the other what was asleep within yourself. And if that's it, and if what we call love is just the reflection of this sacred search for reunion, not with someone else, but with our own lost side. Because when Adam saw Eve, he did not see a separate creation. He saw himself in the form of a mirror. When you begin to recognize in yourself both what acts and what nurtures, both what builds and what into its alchemy happens, not in words, not in doctrines, but in the heart. It is there that you become one flesh with the all, not through religion, but through remembrance. And perhaps, my dear alchemists, the great revelation of this story is not even about ribs, sides, or translations, but about the silent call it brings into each of us. Are you ready to become whole? Maybe you came here seeking an explanation, but what you found was a mirror. If so, then something has already begun to awaken. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential to help more people discover stories like this one and many others we share here.